Hello and welcome to the Sana Psychological Podcast, your safe space for connection, healing, and growth. Each episode, our experienced clinicians and special guests will share strategies, stories, and resources to support your unique path to well-being. Because at Sana, your mental health matters. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Sana Psychological Podcast. I'm your host, Paige Abbott. Today, we are talking about something surprisingly radical in our modern life, doing less on screens. This doesn't mean abandoning technology. It doesn't mean throwing your phone into a lake or moving into a cabin in the woods and writing letters by candlelight. It just means reclaiming a little bit more of your attention. Maybe introducing a little bit more boredom, a little bit more presence into your life. This episode is about the value of going analog and why ordinary offline activities are becoming some of the most nourishing experiences we can have. Most people don't need a digital detox where they've moved away from screens and technology completely. This can be really difficult to accomplish, but we do call for a digital rebalance. So that's what we're going to get into today. I do observe that there's something interesting happening in people right now. In a world where everything is becoming more and more digital, more automated, more optimized, people are quietly returning to more and more analog experiences. I hear this coming into the therapy space all the time. People coming in and talking about how they've logged out of their social media account for a little while to give themselves a break, how they're picking up more books, they're listening to more vinyl records, they're taking pictures on film rather than their phone, they're doing pen and paper journaling, they're playing board games, gardening, cooking from scratch, puzzles, trying to just do more and more things without constant inundation of noise. So taking walks, cooking, doing chores without always listening to something. And it's not because these things are more efficient, they usually aren't. And that's almost the point. Analog life asks more from us. It asks us to slow down enough to participate. When you use a record player, you don't just press play and disappear. You choose an album, you place the needle, you listen intentionally. When you read a physical book, there are no notifications beside the paragraph, no additional tabs, no distractions. You get to focus, you get to go into the texture, the experience, the whole feelings of what you're doing. And this demands something very different of our system than the really quick and easy that we've come to be comfortable with. Don't get me wrong, you're listening to a podcast, so I recognize that it might feel a little bit ironic or even a bit hypocritical, but I would argue that it's not. So again, I'm not saying that we're never going to turn or use technology. Of course we are. Most of our jobs, our school, are connected somehow to screens and technology. That's not something that we can easily erase from our lives. And this isn't about erasure. It's about balance. And it's about the reintroduction of going to things that are a little bit slower, take a little bit more time. This does something different for our brains. We're accessing reward and dopamine on a slower scale, which is how we are fundamentally intended to receive these helpful neurotransmitters. We're not designed to receive everything instantaneously. This is literally messing with our minds. It's changing how we respond to the world. And so a lot of people aren't necessarily feeling like a physical exhaustion, but you hear people talk all the time about feeling tired, feeling drained. I think there's an attentional exhaustion that's happening. People are just consuming so much material so quickly, And again, we're not designed to do that. So we're trying to talk today about just starting to slow down. Our brains notice these changes. And so even if we're on screens and engaged with technology, still the majority of our time, our brain will notice those moments where we take a step back and we go analog, we go quiet, because our brain responds to things. Our brain notices these habits, and over time, it responds in kind with literally functioning differently, responding to neurotransmitters differently. These are all things that can start to help us to fundamentally settle that activation that you might be feeling inside. Our nervous system responds to simplicity. Our nervous system responds to a slow process that isn't just instantaneous reward. You can feel it after you've spent an afternoon gardening, baking, or reading. You just notice that time passes differently. Your breathing changes, your thoughts slow down, you become less reactive. There's a reason that people describe these activities as grounding because they literally pull our attention back into the physical world. One of the biggest misconceptions about reducing screen time is the idea that life suddenly needs to become ultra productive or deeply intellectual, and it doesn't. So the goal isn't to replace social media with reading literature for hours every night. The goal is simply to create more moments that exist outside of the scroll. And there are countless ways to do that. So, what are some of these ways? Well, let's go through some ideas, see if any catch your attention. So, here are some everyday analog swaps you could use that might make a surprising difference for you. Things like sketching, stretching, knitting, crochet, woodworking, puzzles, playing with building blocks like Lego, painting, using clay, journaling, writing, short stories, poetry, calligraphy, cooking more complicated recipes, baking, bread, cakes, things like that, building model kits. These activities engage us. They engage our hands, they engage our mind. They're very mindful based activities, which is one of the values of going analog, that we're engaging more of our senses in a very active way than what screens and technology can do. So this allows us to experience something different. Again, when we're maybe playing an instrument, learning how to play music, there's a big process to that. It takes time, it takes a lot of energy, and we see those slow, gradual improvements along the way. That's incredibly rewarding and incredibly reinforcing. That's very different than getting a quick laugh from a video that we've seen that only lasted 15 seconds. Another way that we can go more analog in our lives is bringing back more single purpose objects. So, for instance, using an alarm clock instead of your phone. My partner always laughs at me that I've had the same alarm clock. I think now it's probably 25 or so years old. Still works great, wakes me up in the morning, tells the time. That works just fine for me. That allows me to put my phone away at the end of the night. I usually do that around 8 p.m. and I just disconnect. I don't need any more phone time. If there's something that's going to come through, I'll see it the next day. And I can get sources of entertainment in other ways than just from that phone in front of me. You could use a paper notebook to keep track of things instead of endless note apps. There are still good old sticky notes that we can use to write lists for ourselves, make a quick note to remind ourselves of something. We can use a kitchen timer to time if we're baking or doing a different type of project. We can use a wall calendar, printed and physical recipes that are handwritten, and reading a physical book. Sometimes reducing screen time starts by reducing how often you need that device nearby. I did read once, I can't actually place where it came from, but it said having your phone physically out of a room benefits the quality of interaction with others and self more than if you have it next to you, and even if you have it next to you and turned over. So there's still something about these devices that we're so cued to them, it energizes us. And I've certainly noticed that for myself, that if I have my phone right around, I do notice a fragmentation of my attention. I'm focused a bit more on that device sitting there, even if it's turned over. There's a part of my brain wondering, what's happening on there? Is there something I need to see? Is there something I need to check? And even if that's only 2% of my attention and energy, that's still taking 2% away from whatever else I'm actually trying to do. So there are techniques like that that, again, don't ask us to be technologically free, but they just ask us to take breaks, find some balance, have different boundaries with those devices. Other options for sort of more analog entertainment include things like board games, playing card games, doing crosswords, playing, doing paper word searches, mahjong, Sudoku, those sorts of things that you can buy in books, listening to an album all the way through, listening even to a whole song all the way through. Do we do that often enough anymore? Reading magazines, going to the library, sitting outside and talking to somebody. Not every evening needs to be brought to us through the internet and that online technical stimulation. Another thing to think about is when you're doing certain tasks that have become connected with listening to input, so even a podcast like this, you may want to be more selective and more intentional about when, where, and if you're listening to things. So if you've gotten into the habit of always having noise, whether it's podcast or music on when you're cooking, when you're doing tasks, when you're walking, when you're exercising, you may just want to try doing any of these activities without that stimulation and see how it feels. At first, it might feel a bit odd. You might feel like something's missing, and that's okay. That can be part of that shifting process. But just also see if it offers some benefits, if it gives you something different that you may also like. And so this experimentation just allows you to see what you may want to keep doing in your life in terms of habits and routines and things that you may want to change. So you may start to bring in more device-free rituals. It might be a morning coffee or tea without your phone, family dinners without screens, Sunday afternoons where you turn things off and just read, walk, do some sort of task. A nightly wind down with music or dim lights instead of scrolling. So these sorts of rituals can start to become our anchors, right? We can subtly do them. So we don't have to do this in an extreme way. It's just slowly turning down the volume and the time spent on devices, on technology, to just see what that opens up for you. A lot of people notice they do feel a little bit more calm. Some of that internal anxiety and racy feeling that they had starts to quiet down a little bit. Some people start to feel a little bit more positive and optimistic. Sometimes we don't realize how negative the content that we're consuming is and the impact that that's having on our mood. So there are different ways and benefits that we can get out of these changes. Another way to start moving in that analog direction is just to make screens slightly less convenient. So making things a little less routine, reducing that ease of access, those tiny bits of friction matter, and they can really help us in that change process. So that could look like charging your phone in kind of a separate, far away room in your home that you don't tend to go in as often. That way, your phone is not just sitting right beside you, that if you have a thought, you can pick it up and you're on there right away. Your brain has to go through those extra steps of going, oh, I'm reaching. Oh, but wait, it's not there. Where is it? Oh, it's over in that room. Do I really want to go get it? Maybe not. And then we delay. And so that just gives us a little bit more time away from screens and technology to be more present, to be more focused, to be more mindful. You may want to try logging out of social media once in a while. Again, that just gives the brain that immediate pause when you've clicked on the app and it's taking you to the login screen, provides you that reminder. And that reminder is also an opportunity to then check in. Do you actually want to go through the effort of logging in at that moment, or do you want to do something else? You can try turning your screen to grayscale. I've had a number of clients who found this successful because it reduces the stimulation intensity of what they're seeing and basically visually makes everything feel pretty blah. And that can be helpful. That's kind of what we're trying to accomplish with Analogue. Not that life feels blah in a bad way, but less euphoric, less intoxicating. And this sense of stability, calmness, what some people would now label as boredom, is what we are kind of fighting against with all of the technology stimulation that we get. And returning to that can do wonders for our mood, our mind, our focus, our energy, and even our rest. A lot of people notice when they're doing less on their phones, they sleep better, and they just carry a more fundamental sense of calm, balance, and a clearer mind as they navigate their day. You can remove certain apps from your home screen as another way to make screens less convenient. You can start to make the analog options more convenient. So putting books, puzzles, instruments, notebooks visibly around and easy to reach so that those become just as accessible for you as picking up your phone and turning on your device. Human behavior, we go in the direction of convenience, and everything in our world has become so convenient that we now have a lot of impatience for the inconvenient. And as a therapist and as a human being, I honestly and truly believe this is something that we need to retrain ourselves on. We need to get more comfortable once again with the slow, with the inconvenient, with the meh, with what we consider bored and being bored. These are all things that actually have a lot of value for our health, and they are being slowly eradicated from our lives. And that's where it's been really neat to see that rebellion and that revolution happening, where people are wanting to come back to the slow and to the analog. It's really neat to see people making that active, conscious choice for themselves and for their health and their well-being, and to see the benefits that come from that. So again, we're not talking about eliminating technology or eliminating screen time. It's just starting to shift some of those really automatic, habitual responses to technology and creating a bit more balance in our lives where we have other activities and things to do that offer us something different than just always being on our phone with that really quick, easy, intoxicating stimulation. I love the people who are consciously and intentionally choosing this path of change. And if that's you, good on you. If you're analog curious, good on you. If you're here for another reason, welcome. It's great to have you. Next podcast, we are going to talk more about how to maybe gently introduce some of these analog options to kids. Now, adults, we have more freedom, more free will, and that's why I think a lot of adults are making this a conscious choice to come back to some of these analog behaviors. But what about kids? A lot of kids, they aren't feeling that they need to change things up. They're in the height of really enjoying the dopamine, the intoxication that they get from being on their phone, being on social media, connecting with friends, looking at reels that they can talk about at school. So I know that that's a real sticking point for parents is how do we bring these changes in for our kids? And that's the topic that we'll get into next time. So I hope that you'll join us for that next episode of Going Analog, the parenting edition. So, how do we start to do this as parents? Thank you so much for joining me today. And maybe after this podcast, you'll put down your phone and go do something analog. Enjoy yourself, enjoy the world around you, enjoy nature, enjoy connection, enjoy the tangible, enjoy the mindful. This is what Analogue is all about and can do wondrous things for our mental health and our well-being, which is what we are here to support. Thank you so much for being here as always. And I look forward to talking to the parents, the grandparents, the teachers, anyone next time who is looking to support our kids and youth in shifting our relationship with technology and screens, even just a little bit. We'll talk to you then. Thank you for listening to the Sana Psychological Podcast. We're glad you joined us today. For more resources, free tools, or to book a session with our team, visit sanapsychological.com. Your mental health is our priority. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and take good care.